Welcome everyone, and welcome back to the Law series here on Dark Matters, and Dark Matters indeed, as we always say, and today is no exception. The system operates as it always does, deceit thick in the air, blatant lies spun without hesitation, the deviancy of its players on full display, or, at the very least, the sheer ignorance of the minions who enforce its crimes. The Matrix has you. But today we have a guest who stands as the antithesis to this corruption, a man who dares to challenge the Death Star itself, taking the Department for Work and Pensions to task. You could call him a Jedi, you could call him a hero, or you could simply call him Kevin. Kevin exposes the blatant lies and deceit perpetuated by the DWP, its woefully unqualified agents, its bias, and the clear conflicts of interest against the very people it claims to support. He shines a light on the parade of medically incompetent, unqualified individuals, forcing non-compulsory assessments onto the unsuspecting. Assessments designed to demonize and destroy the most vulnerable in our society. We have an inalienable right as the principal authority to ensure our health and well-being are of paramount importance. Our rights and entitlements stand above the so-called benefits and privileges handed out by a corrupt state, one that classifies you as a ward under its control. And as always, the key lies in the cipher of language, unlocking the truth and removing the veil of ignorance. If you or someone you know is dealing with the DWP, this episode is a must share. Kevin, thank you so much for taking time out to come and have a chat with me.
No worries. Thanks for having me. And it's a real pleasure.
Awesome. I think this episode genuinely is going to help a lot of people and hopefully shine, the light onto the ultra vires, shall we say, which means acting outside of their own authority and practices of the DWP. And like I said in the intro, how this demonizes the most vulnerable section of people in our society. And Kevin's been working tirelessly to expose the ultra vires practices, shall we say. So Kevin, I had the privilege of meeting you through the incredible David, the governor over at SPLS Pro. And for those listening, make sure you do check out our other episode with David for details. And that's when I kind of became aware of the work that you were doing in relation to these so-called medical assessments. And we use that term very loosely, don't we, as we're about to uncover. So you kind of empower people with the right language, the right notices, and they're asking the right questions, arming them with the tools to kind of expose this kind of blatant fraud, which we know is happening across the board in the systems. But again, if our ignorance isn't our ignorance isn't holding them to task, is it? So this awareness of this is absolutely key, as it is in all of our exposés of that kind of corrupt system. So how did you kind of get on this journey? What kind of sparked your mission, so to speak?
Right. So unfortunately, I am subject to the same processes as everybody else. I'm unable to work through illness, haven't been able to work since 2007. And a friend of mine who I've known 40 plus years, Graham, was in the same boat. So obviously we were subject to these assessments and all the other nonsense they bring to you. So initially, we got some information from Get Out of Debt Free, when it was the original lot, about, and they sort of brought to our attention about the private companies, corporations that are operating all these systems, and that's not being disclosed to you. So we started really taking to task, right, let's go and look at legislation, let's look what they're doing. And we sort of came up with idea of, well, to challenge basically everything they say, pull apart the language. And what we did, we came up with a process and we threw ourselves under the bus first, Graham and I. So we don't come along and say to people, oh, try this. No, we threw ourselves under the bus to test it before we released our findings. They didn't like it. They didn't like it at all. And in fact, in those early days, which is well, probably, it's a few years ago now, but they didn't like what we were doing, and they would basically sanction you almost straight away, which forces you into the only recourse is you have to follow the process, which is mandatory reconsideration of their decision. And until you get a response from them saying, no, we're not changing our mind, or yes, we are, you can't move to tribunal. The tribunal will not let you in without the sheet of paper saying mandatory reconsideration, we're not changing our mind.
Yeah.
So they forced us into tribunal, and I've been in twice and won both times, hands down. They will not, we don't get messed with anymore. They just will. In fact, they try not to even speak to us now, which, as far as I'm concerned, is wonderful. But it's just through info and what we've uncovered and going and looking at the legislation, seeing exactly what the wording is, and then using that against them. That's where we've come from. And initially, when we were part of sovereigns, but not in the capacity we are now. We were listening to what Dave was saying and their approach under the trust, where your person and using your person. But at that particular time, we were focused on the legislation. So we were listening to what Dave was saying, and it made sense to us, but we were on a slightly different path. We were on the legislation path. So it just so happened in 2018, I believe, SPLs or SPLS Pro had a meeting in Oxford. We had a gathering for a weekend. And when we got to Oxford, we were talking to David, and he was helping a member with the DWP, and they were sending him round in circles, just round and round in circles. So we all met up and we said, well, look, this is what we're doing. So maybe we can step in and give you a hand with this case, which we did. And the result of that was the guy in question was, he was bedbound, poor guy. The result of that was we ended up with, after a couple of letters, was he got a response. Basically, here's your money. You will never be subject to another assessment, blah, blah, blah. So that was our first success outside of ourselves. And they totally left him alone. So that's when we sort of started bringing our process to SPLs and saying, and initially, Callie, it was conditional acceptance. Yes, that's the road we started down. So you got a letter from an agent who wants to assess you. So we would, thank you very much for your kind offer of assessment. Bit of information. And we'd ask questions like, what are the medical qualifications of the assessor? Can we see their personal indemnity insurance, sight of proof, in case they cause us harm by their report, whatever. And so that's the road we went down, but that was all paperwork. And to be honest with you, at that time, it was very intensive. The paperwork was very, very intensive, because we don't really do the template thing. Okay. Not that it matters, but everything we've ever done is literally individual. The questions might be the same, but no two letters are the same. So although, because we've had you've used a template letter. And so we go back to them and go, what, like the template letters that you send? So, it's like a pointless argument they try. So what if it's a template? It's relevant. It's totally relevant. So, but obviously they don't like. Go on, Callie. Sorry.
No, no, I'm just going to say they do the same thing. Like you say, it's bullshit baffles brains, and it that obfuscation
Yeah,
just in hope that you just go away and give up, really, isn't it? Of course.
that's what it's designed to do. And unfortunately, the majority of people,
Mm.
I hate to say it, will just go, this is just too much. And I understand why. I totally understand why they do that, because it is a minefield and they will baffle you with bullshit. And it is exactly that. So initially, when we were dealing with this, certainly me, once I understood what was going on, I was
Yeah,
angry, really
yeah,
angry. But I learned very quickly you can't deal with this stuff in anger. And and you're on the phone to the DWP or its agents or whatever. There's no point getting upset with them. There's no point shouting and screaming at them because they're literally minions. They don't even know what's going on.
nice.
So I had to teach myself, which didn't take very long, to take it all as a joke. So I used to have to phone them up, and of course they'd tell me X, Y, Z, and I'd just start laughing down the phone, laughing for a little bit, and then stop, go, oh, okay, then, and then move it on. So I turned it into a joke, and that
Yeah.
really worked for me, and I
I think
could
we've got to
deal with
treat
it.
everything that's going on in the world at the moment is the divine comedy. If you're not laughing, then you're having a nervous breakdown somewhere. So
Well,
I'm with you on that
you've
one.
got to laugh. You've got to
Exactly.
laugh, and you've got to take it for the joke it is and deal with it in that capacity. And all we're doing is asking questions. That's all we're doing. And you'll just remember, ultimately, you are responsible for your health and welfare. Nobody else, not a doctor, not anybody. You are responsible, and you have the last say. And of course, they don't want you to have any say. We no, you must use this agency, but they haven't been disclosed to us. Comes under the Fraud Act, non-full disclosure, no transparency, etc., etc. So that's the road that we've taken with it, and it's evolved. So it's evolved from letters to most of it you can do in phone calls now.
Yeah.
Just there's things you're entitled to. They'll tell you you're not entitled to, but you are. And the other thing is there's like with assessment, you've got three types. So you've got face to face, which isn't really going on at the moment. We all know why. You've
Mhm.
got telephone assessment, and you've got a paper based review.
Mhm.
Okay, they don't like telling you about that, but there is a paper based review. And for instance, in the so if you there's different types of assessment. Obviously, you've got PIP, you've got ESA.
Yeah.
So if you get in ESA, you'll get what's called a work capability assessment. Okay. Now, the, the ridiculous thing is, if you're signed off long term sick, which basically that's the criteria, okay, to meet what we do, are you signed off long term sick? That's it.
Yeah.
So why would you need this is one of the questions, why would you need a work capability assessment if you're signed off as unfit for work?
Yeah.
Why?
Who? Yeah.
And that's a
Yeah.
question you can ask.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do I need one? I've got an official from a GP that
Yeah.
says I'm unfit for work. Now the
Yeah.
GP's only signed that. They like to call them fit notes, but they're not. They're sick notes. So it says you're
And
unfit.
why did it? I mean, we know it's to do with the language and the contract. Why did they actually change it from a sick to a fit? Basically, exactly because of that, like to kind of get you under like a different cosh.
Yeah, it's them changing and messing about with language.
It's
Okay.
psychological, isn't it? People like,
Yeah,
no, you are fit. Like, get back to work, you peasant.
yeah. That's basically we don't believe you're ill. or you're not ill enough, to not work. So
Yeah.
that's where we started pulling them apart in that area.
Yeah.
Is the agents aren't fit, okay,
No.
to assess anybody. If you actually go on to like Companies House, maybe Dun and Bradstreet, and look these people up, Maximus, Capita. There's a new kid on the block called Igneous, and who was the other lot? Atos. I think Atos's contract's just coming to an end. But if you go and have a look, you'll see they're all private companies,
Yeah.
which you have that hasn't been disclosed to you. So therefore, what you've got no obligation to deal with these people. But people
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
letters and they think, oh, it's from the government. It's not. It really isn't. It's a private company. Now, here's where trouble starts. So you
Right.
mentioned to the private company,
Yeah.
well, look, you're not. Can you give me the assessor's indemnity insurance? Excuse me, indemnity insurance. What are their medical qualifications, etc., etc. And they will
Yeah.
say, oh, you have to go and speak to the DWP. So what we do as a matter of course is if we've asked these questions to the agent,
Yeah.
just as a matter of course, you send the same letter, if you've done it as a letter or an email, you send that to the DWP too. So you
Yeah.
say, so it's clean hands, right? You're
Yeah.
not doing anything behind the DWP's back, and you're informing them of what you've done to their agent. So you say, here's the
Yeah.
questions we've asked of your agent. To the DWP, you'll basically get sent backwards and forwards. The agent will say, speak to the DWP, and the DWP will go speak to the agent. Okay, so it's this circular nonsense. Nobody will give you a straight answer. So this is where they just send you around in circles, but you just stand your ground. They
Yeah.
won't answer your questions that you put to them because they can't without
Yeah.
exposing the whole game.
Yeah. Yeah. And
But
I think that,
if you've
yeah,
asked,
that's,
go on,
no, no,
yeah.
sorry. Yeah. Go on, go on.
If you've asked the questions, and then what generally happens is they try and assess you. You say, well, I'm not happy to go ahead at the moment. Just can you give me this information? And
Yeah.
they'll just set. Then they'll send you a new appointment. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can cancel. Say, well, I don't have to attend this assessment because I've asked you questions you failed to answer. I'm more than
Yeah.
happy to go ahead once you've given me the information that's required. And of
Yeah.
course, they can't. So you
Yeah.
just end up in this loop.
Yeah. And it's like, say, it's
But
like say how I deal in debt. It's like they're never going to. It's like the same with the council tax, same with any of the fraud and the nonsense where they're operating outside of the alleged authority. You ask them certain questions, the right words in the right order at the right time. For it is the quest, isn't it? It's the question that drives us.
yeah,
They don't answer, then you've kind of got them in contractual terms in they're in default with their silence. And
yeah,
like say the terminology, when we understand what it means, like mandatory, we know that's a contractual term. So they're just trying to get you to contract with them. When really, actually, as you say, there's no mandatory obligation to even attend these assessments, but they ain't going to
no,
tell you that.
no, and that's as I said. I think I put in one of the documents I sent you. It clearly says in there, and this is a
Yeah.
fact. I'm telling you from my own experience, my personal experience, and other people that we've given the information to.
Yeah.
If you phone the agent, so the person trying to assess you, and you say, "Is this mandatory?" They will tell you, "Yes, it is."
Yeah.
But if you phone the DWP, you might have to ask them a question a couple of times because, of course, they don't want to answer it. Ask them, are they mandatory? And they will tell you, no, they're not
Wow.
mandatory. And
Wow.
the reason, as it is, as I've broken down in one of the documents I've given you, I even give the reasoning. And the reason they're not mandatory is because these people aren't qualified. They're not
Yeah.
qualified. to give you any of this type of assessment, if you look these companies up, you will find that they're mostly IT firms. How's an IT firm giving you a medical?
Wow.
And how are they
Exactly.
doing it over the phone? You know?
Exactly. How can you have a long-standing condition where you've perhaps been under a consultant who's an expert in his field, and then have a 10-minute assessment of some cockwomble for, from an IT company who says, oh, actually, you're fine. It's kind of like what happened in COVID, isn't it? Like we were laughing last time we spoke, not that it's kind of funny for people in that sense, but it's like when say there was somebody stacking the milk in Tesco's and you weren't wearing your mask, it was like people kind of decided that they were all kind of somehow medically qualified to tell you exactly what you need to do with your own health. So in a sense, it's like it's the exact same kind of cult, isn't it, with these people? And
Yeah,
like I said in the description, with the minions, where I'm just doing my job. There, that and ignorance is no defense of the law because we're all equal under the law. But we have been
yeah,
labouring under this ignorance, and it is that thing. We all do it. I do it sometimes, especially when something comes from the government. It's so programmed and instilled in us to go, oh, I better just do as they say, else I'm not going to get my money, or I'm not going to get this benefit or that benefit. When really, like you say,
yeah,
it's not mandatory. These people aren't medically qualified. And like you say, what you do in the Telegram group, and we will link these, I'll link these documents below for people so that they can download them for free so you can have a look at them. And also the link to Kevin's group, Telegram group, if you are being affected by this, or somebody who is. I think everybody does know somebody who's affected by this nonsense, don't
yeah,
they? It's massive fraud on a massive scale, just as council taxes,
yeah,
just as all of the daft systems are. But if we aren't holding them to task and we aren't holding them to account, well, they're our public servants, then they're just running roughshod, as we know that they already are. So
yeah.
obviously those are two big things. Like obviously it's not mandatory, they're not medically qualified. What are the other kind of key points you kind of pull the pants down with, Camilla?
Well, here's the funny thing. What you tend to find, especially with the DWP, is at some point during your interactions, they'll actually, and this is true, they'll actually send you the answer to your problems. They don't know they've done it.
Mm.
For instance, just recently, and it's covered in one of the documents I've sent you, the Tribunal one.
Yeah.
They're saying, so they're oh, I've forgotten where I was going with that. So yeah, so what we're doing is pulling apart what they're trying to do and just pointing out they're not fit for purpose. They're employed by the DWP and biased towards,
Yeah.
but you're not, you know, it's like GPs. Your GP is only signing a sick note on the strength of the information from consultants, etc.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all your GP's doing. He's just going, that's what I've got. That's valid. Is the sick certificate for whatever reason. That's all he's doing. So technically, anybody that's going to assess you would have to be at the same level as your consultant or above. They can't be below. They cannot be below. So, and that's the trick. You think we're the government, you must do what we say. Soon as you consent, you're done because you've given them permission to assess. Okay, so you never consent, but you never refuse either. That's the big thing. Never refuse an assessment because as soon as you refuse, you'll get sanctioned. So you just say, well, just can you just answer the questions, please? That's all I'm asking
Yeah.
for, relevant information. And of course, they don't want to. So by not refusing, you're sending them round in circles. And we've got a case right at the moment where she's had three different agencies,
Yeah.
and each of them have attempted three times to assess. Rule of threes. And as soon as they haven't been able to get through the third one, so they've sent it off to another agency who's then tried. So this poor girl's
Yeah.
now had 9 times. So three agencies, three attempts. And the last letter she got was expect to we'll write to you again. Now, I got a letter like that some years ago, and I never heard from them again. So it's almost like they send you out this letter to say, yeah, we'll be in contact again, but you've got them nailed down.
Yeah.
So I got the same letter, never heard another thing.
And do you find, Kevin, because obviously people who are watching this who are perhaps affected by this, like say the thought of going into a court, which is nobody likes to do, believe me, I've done it, it's awful. And also, the idea of going to a tribunal can be very, it's very intimidating. And again, that's why probably a lot of people do give up. But again, I think it's like with the law, isn't it? And the legal system, a lot of it tends to, and like you say, using the legal system to, catch them out because they're not abiding by their own rules. They're not playing by their own rules. So we kind of trip them up with their own nonsense, don't we, really, in legal? Like you
Yeah,
said, there's that different jurisdiction to what's lawful to what's legal. But do you find that you like say once people are you like say you don't say you're not going to do it or you're not having the assessment or you don't want to do it because like you say we're staying in honor. I'm happy to come to the assessment if you ask me if you can answer these questions. And once they've asked them, I know you said that you've got people now even just asking these things verbally, perhaps using email and maybe notices. Do you find in a kind of percentage term, does that kind of like you said, do people do they kind of go when they go, oh, we'll be in touch and it goes under the rug because obviously they don't want to expose their own game en masse. It's the same with the council tax. Or do you find that a lot of people are pushed to that tribunal phase? Like, what's the kind of odds?
yeah. I mean, I'll give you some examples with the tribunal stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're trying to make this as difficult as possible. This is why that document I've given you, that's just been produced and that's going into two tribunals. That's why it's just to whom it will concern. So whatever reason you're going to tribunal for, if it's via assessments or you've got the wrong award or they've marked you down, that should just go in on top of all your evidence. Okay,
yeah,
regardless, just put it in there because that is pointing out to the tribunal that you know what's going on.
yeah,
And we've had situations recently where we've put stuff in to tribunal for a date, and we've had letters come back, or not me personally, but the claimants had letters come back saying, we're not going to give you a tribunal.
mm,
We're going to go and speak to the DWP about their decision. Now,
So
at this point, you've got a choice.
yeah,
You can either go, let's see what happens with the DWP, or like
mm,
because I'm a bit of a fecker, I would go back to HMCTS, Her Majesty's Court Tribunal Service, and say, how hang on, how's your private company going to go and speak to that private company and tell them to have a look at their decision? You're Are you denying me access to the law? Are you
yeah,
denying me access to the process? I demand a ruling.
yeah, yeah,
They won't like that, but you're entitled to. So, that's the
yeah,
thing. How can they just go, I will go and speak to them? Well, hang on a minute. I've come all this way. I've been through an assessment. I've been sanctioned. I'm now in tribunal. I'm 6, 8, 9, 10, 12 months down the line. And I've got, I'm still not getting anywhere. This is why we say fight them from the off.
yeah,
If people want to go through the assessment process, that's a personal choice. Okay, that's fine. I'm not going to stop. If you want to do that, do that. But the way we look at it is because the whole process is so dodgy,
yeah,
we say fight them from the off, ask the questions from the off, because you could go through the process, you could wait 3, 4 months to get a response,
yeah,
and maybe the response is wrong. Now you've got to start the mandatory reconsideration process. There's no way around it. That's their process. Your person is in the process. So you have to follow it. But then it's
yeah,
like mandatory reconsideration, just a little bit of info. A mandatory reconsideration under their
mm,
legislation should take 15 working days. So technically, if you ask them on a Monday, 3 Mondays, working days.
Yeah.
But I've had one where I didn't get a mandatory reconsideration for 8 months.
Yeah, wow.
Because
So
they just ignoring me. And so you've got to keep pressuring them, you know.
yeah,
But that's the road they take you down. But as I say, the choice is you can, if they do get a letter like, you know, oh, we're going to ask the DWP to look at their decision again. It's up to you whether I would go straight back to HMCTS and go, well, hang on a minute, I want a ruling. That's what I'm entitled to. Let's have it. And of course, because the other thing you've got to realise, if you've got, I mean, I hate to think how many tribunals for DWP are going across in the country every day. Each one of those is 250 quid to HMCTS. Now you understand why they don't want to rule on what we put in, because that's the end of the assessment process, because it's totally illegal. And of course, that's why they're saying, oh, we'll go and have a little word with them. They don't want to rule on it because it's going to shut everything down. So that's where we dig our heels in.
Well, exactly. And then you know, as flippant as I say it always, perhaps science, it is a game, isn't it? And it's the same with these tribunals. You know, it's like in a court. You know, they'll bat something at you, and we bat it back, or you know, and again, it's just knowing, isn't it? Like each case will be individual, but that it'll hinge and quite cleverly on a few key points. It's the same with debt, and if you just, like I say, stay your ground and stick to the script, then you're not giving them any wiggle room to kind of maneuver. And again, like you said, Kevin, we know it's all in the language. It's like I always made the joke, like, what is a mandate? What is mandatory? Well, a mandate is 2 men going for a curry, right? That's about as much authority and power as it's got. But we hear these words as you know, these trained kind of in the plebitorial system, and we all go, I have to do it, you know. But you know, knowledge is power, absolutely. And I mean, a key one that I know when we chatted the other week, you were saying about the Social Security Administration Act, and is it Section 19? It states that a medical examination is required by the Secretary of State. So do you want to kind of like it's little tricks, isn't it, about going, well, hang on a minute. Over to you, Kevin, because I was like, oh, of course, you know.
Yeah, so Section 19, you see, right, so just to explain, this is what the DWP sent to one of our clients.
Yeah.
So they gave us the answer, okay?
Yeah.
They sent it to us. It's brilliant.
They hang themselves,
Yeah,
don't they? Yeah.
exactly.
Amazing.
So what they've sent is, they said, here's what it says about assessments, and that basically covers WC, work capability, PIP, UC, all of it. It covers it. At the top, it says medical assessment. Okay, that on the legislation, medical assessment. So if you go, so you can go and look that up. I'll bring this up in a minute, but we went and looked at some definitions from a medical authorities. Okay. So that's what there's. So the medical assessment. Now, then it goes on and it says the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions can request that you attend a medical assessment. Well, my first thing, as I said, because I'm a bit of a fecker, I would say, oh, could I see a copy of the request from the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, specifically saying, naming me? Because that's what the legislation says. It doesn't say agencies, third parties, people employed by us. It says the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions. That's what it says. So that's just a bit of shall we say, yeah, it's a bit of a play. You're playing with them a bit. That's what legislation says. Can I have a copy of the request that the Secretary, what is it, Liz Kendall at the moment, isn't it, sitting up there in the office of? That's just, yeah, that's sort of a little bit of a dig, you know, poke in the ribs.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
then in the next line down, it will say something to the effect of a healthcare practitioner or professional. So they changed the language. It says medical assessment, and then they're saying a healthcare practitioner or approved by the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions. Well, okay, what's the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions qualifications to decide who's qualified to assess people?
yeah,
Because surely, if you can give somebody that position, then you
yeah,
must be relatively qualified to make that decision. That's the way we look at it. And of
yeah,
course, so they changed the language, which is pointed out in that document I've given you. That they change
yeah,
it from medical. So we went to Merriam-Webster and the Oxford Medical Reference, yeah, and I put in medical practitioner. There's only one definition in those, and that is doctor. That's it.
yeah. Right.
So then we put in healthcare practitioner. Mm, there isn't anything, nothing. It doesn't even
Doesn't
exist
even
as a thing. They're going, no, we don't have anything for healthcare practitioner. And this is the trick. Are they telling us that their healthcare professionals are more qualified than your GP?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
that's what they're trying to tell you.
yeah,
Well, if that's the case, that's why we ask for indemnity insurance. That's why we ask for their qualifications. Because are you telling me these healthcare professionals that you've employed and approved? I would say approved is lowest lowest quote, lowest price. Their medical qualifications or even healthcare qualifications. That's how they're deciding that. But as I
yeah,
said at the beginning, you are ultimately responsible for your own health and welfare, and you should not hand it down to anybody lightly. It's You're asking for trouble, you know.
yeah. And it is,
So
I suppose that is that sovereignty, isn't it, of being really in an essence, like we were saying, we know what the person is, we know what the legal fiction is, we know how they're operating. I mean, it's like when they say, oh, Parliament is sovereign. No, it's not. It can't be
no,
sovereign. It's not alive. It's not real. It's a fiction. It's living men and women that give, the authority
yeah,
for these people to act in business of state. That's all that it is. And again, we've all been hoodwinked, we've all been conned, we've all been our intelligence levels have all seemed to have gone down into the toilet, and we're so dependent on the daddy. The state is the daddy under that doctrine of parens patriae, where the state is the parent. So if we're not taking responsibility, if we're not aware of how that system operates, and the system actually operates quite well, it's been hijacked and doesn't work for our benefit. I mean, it goes far darker, and if people who've watched a lot of my videos on this channel, we're not going to go there really. But like you say, it hinges on these few points. It hinges on just that basic understanding of the language or the misuse of language. Because when we get in these documents, again, nothing's ever signed. No one ever wants to put the name to it because nobody wants to take the liability for it, because
yeah,
basically it's all fictional. It's all bullshit. And like I say, back to point one, bullshit baffles brains and it obfuscates our minds. And especially when someone's not well, and if you're operating from a place of fear, or and these people are like literally got you in a, because like I say, the most vulnerable in society, hanging on a razor's edge of life and death. You're going to just try and go along with it as best you can, to try and get the best outcome. But like you say, nothing against perhaps attempting that within the system, but just to ask some simple questions that operate outside of that, to hold them to account, because they're never going to want that on the record. They don't want to expose the game. Same with mortgages, same with council tax, same with all the fictional fraud. Then you are taking
yeah,
that power back, aren't you? I know, like I said it before, it's cheesy, but knowledge
yeah.
really is. is the power here. And it's quite, well, you've made it simple for people, because if you don't know it, everything they send you, you're going to go blah, 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 because but once you've got that
Yeah,
clarity and you can cut through what it, the crap on these pieces, which are just basically pieces of paper, and that have no authority over you
yeah,
whatsoever, then it's empowering people, isn't it? And that's the powerful.
yeah. That's what, and our whole thing, obviously, initially, when I was saying to you about um, when we first started this, it was conditional acceptance, blah, blah, blah. Well,
Yeah,
that was quite involved. Okay. But obviously,
yeah,
it's evolved because as we've learned. So
yeah,
now, this is all we're doing is we're giving everybody, you don't need me. I'm more than happy to give you some direction if you like, and help and say, this is what I would do. But ultimately, we're giving you everything you need to deal with this yourself. So you don't need to be relying on outside parties, which is the
yeah.
whole point of what we've done. We wanted to release this. We even took it to some charities in the early days,
Mm.
disabled charities and stuff. And do you know what? It's quite amazing. They just don't want to know.
No, I bet.
You're going, listen, we've got an answer for this nonsense, and they're just
Yeah,
no. And you just think, so there's even more. You're claiming to be there to help people, but we come along with answers and points, and you're like, no, we don't want to know anything about that because they're still part of the process, start part of the system.
yeah, yeah.
So that's
And
quite disappointing.
yeah. Well, again, it's in the language when we know citizens advice. Citizen means municipal servant, and a municipal servant is a corporate employee that is registered to the City of London, which is ultimately run by the bar.
Yeah.
So the legal and financial arm of Ludan, or the City of Ludan, and we won't go there today. But I want to try and keep this a little bit of the occult, because that's how the spell rolls. But
No, that's yeah,
trying to keep this simple for people, because it's so far reaching. Same with mortgages and council tax in effect, but this is, if people can just ask a simple set of questions that Kevin has worked to kind of, you and obviously the guys that you work with as well, to simplify this for people so that they can get effective results with the minimum amount of stress, to the I won't say person, but yeah, I mean it's just absolutely
well,
shocking, isn't it, that.
you're just using your person in the right way. Hence the sign off. That second letter I sent you with the
Yeah,
sign off at the end. That is just establishing who you are and who you are to the person.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
you know,
This is
I'm
it.
I'm the beneficiary,
I'll put this.
and
Yeah,
yeah, and that's my person. So we use that sign off. It doesn't. It's not magic. It's not a magic way, but I do not believe it hurts to establish who you are in relation to your person that you have to use to get your entitlement. So you just set out that I'm Kevin and Mr. Kevin Phillips there, that's my person. And I have to use him to get my entitlements. So
yeah.
that's all you're
And is
doing
it?
is just setting that out.
And that's it, isn't it? The clue is in the title, as I always say, benefits. When they've changed it from an entitlement to a benefit, you were getting the benefits and privileges of the state on the person. And we all know the person is the legal fiction. So you become the
Yeah.
person's personal representative under
Yes.
UCC 1308, so that you are
Yeah.
reserving your law rights, so you're not entering into contract with these motherfuckers, as I say. So you become a party to your own case and asking as king. We keep the highest
Yeah.
status when we ask them questions, etc., and so on. And beneficiary benefits, it's a trust, because all things are trusts,
Yeah.
and special purpose vehicles. So you're accessing your own money. I mean, and money, we use that term loosely because that doesn't even exist either. You only have a promise to pay, and it's just random
Yeah.
numbers on a screen. But when we understand that actually it's the signature that's creating the value, so that's why they used to call it signing on, isn't it, Kevin? Because you would
Yeah.
sign
Yeah.
signature, sign of nature in the sine wave of
Yeah.
time. And then you
Yeah.
would create the value. So, this is why they have all these programs on the television, isn't it? Like about benefit scroungers and people who, and it's like, wow, you cheeky because really that's
Yes.
coming from your trust. That's coming from you, that those benefits because you're the beneficiary to that trust and you're signing to access it. And obviously we would take it without getting into trust law too much, where there's two positions in the trust triangle, and unfortunately there's only two people in that kind of trust situation. And unfortunately, in our ignorance, we are taking up the position of debtor, and obviously the state being the trustee. And when we don't claim our benefits, they go straight back to that administration, and which is the Vatican or the Crown. So it's deep, it's dark, and it's ugly. But Kevin is here to
Definitely.
shine the light of his what do they call it? His Jedi sword. What do they call that? Lightsaber. That went at me. Sounds a bit phallic. Sounds a bit weird. That man, perhaps,
Yeah,
Kevin's getting his lightsaber
we
out.
could call it.
Sorry, I've
Yeah,
gone completely
I'm
west
not
now.
doing on that
I've
on
got short
camera
card.
again. I've got him.
But we've got to laugh,
Yeah, I
haven't
think
we?
I'll leave the lightsaber out while I'm broadcasting. You've got to laugh about it all, and you've got to take it for what it is. Take them to task and listen to the bullshit they'll speak to you, especially the agents, even the DWP. So take it for what it is. A total joke. You're not obliged. You're not obliged to take in any way, shape, or form to follow that process, because none of it's been disclosed to you, as we've just covered. They're not qualified. They're basically, as it says in that document, what they're basically doing, if you go ahead with their process, they are sending a report to the DWP. And that's all it is. And it's an opinion report from an unqualified idiot. And I do use the word idiot. It's
Yeah.
totally valid. It's not offensive. Use it in court. Use it whatever. They are idiots. All it basically means is not knowledgeable in this area.
Yeah.
Okay? So use idiot. I was talking to Graham the other day. I was doing a letter for somebody and I said, I think I might throw moron in there. So we had a bit of a laugh about that and then decided, no, we'll stick with idiot. Because you don't want to give them any, oh, you've called us moron. So just stick with idiot because it's true, it's factual. And yeah,
Ah,
we don't mind pointing it out. We don't mind pointing it out at all. So
yeah.
I've got, if I may, just this is just little bits of information. I've got my pad with me, which I don't need, but there's bits I want to mention this. So
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you
I love
do get sanctioned, or you are being forced down the tribunal route, at the moment there's obviously a massive backlog. So we've got about two or three people at the moment. So they've got a case reference, okay, at tribunal, but they haven't got a date. So what's happening? And obviously that's fine, but if you've got a case reference number from the tribunal, you can then go to the DWP. They won't tell you this, and you can apply for appeal rate of benefit. Okay, which is obviously it's a minimum. I couldn't tell you the amount. I think it'd be different in different cases. But once you've got that case number, you can go to the DWP and say, I'd like to claim appeal rate while I'm waiting for my tribunal. So you will get something. You will get
Yeah.
something while you're waiting, because who knows how long. So it's important. They won't tell you this, but you could also do it if you're taking paperwork to put into a court. If you're lucky enough to have a tribunal place close to you, you can take your paperwork, your bundle. Bundle's a big word for your evidence. When we say
Yeah.
bundles, it's just because people get
Bundle.
confused. Oh, I need to put a bundle. It's just the evidence and stuff you're going to put in. That's all it is.
Yeah.
We just use the term.
Yeah.
But you can even go take your paperwork into the tribunal, get it stamped, and ask them there and then, can I have a reference number? Now, they will often say, oh, we can't do that here. And all this nonsense. Insist, sit down, say, no, I insist, I need a reference number, and insist on a reference number and get a reference number, because as soon as you got the reference number, appeal rate, claim the appeal rate. Whether you've got a claim in or whether you've been sanctioned shouldn't matter. Shouldn't matter at all. We're running and have run consistently a 100% success rate on tribunals, and what everybody we've helped had a result. And even if the result hasn't been correct, we've had the award increased by then going back and ask further questions. There's a few things that's really naughty. Let me just explain. So the DWP themselves, they do get your medical notes, okay? But the agents don't. So the people trying to assess you do not. Sorry, just letting the cat out.
Mine's sat here.
And they can't. I'm surprised the dogs have not been barking, but sorry, I forgot what I was just saying now. Lost the plot.
Tricks that the DWP do. So we've just done the one where you can still apply for a certain amount of your entitlement whilst you're waiting for a trial. And then I think we're going on to the second kind of naughty trick they do. About, I think, did you say that the agencies don't get your medical records, but
yes,
the DWP do?
Yes, the DWP do. But again, so now you've got to ask, what are the qualifications of the people at the DWP looking at my medical records? The agents can't have it because they're not qualified to have it. But my contention is, well, all right, okay, DWP, you get that, but who's looking at it? What are their qualifications? Because the only person I know that looks at my medical records is my GP. So surely you've got to be a GP at a minimum to look at that. So that's, these are the little games they play and ask questions all the time. But the assessors do not get your medical records because they're not entitled. But they need you to go through their process. So they need you to agree to their assessment terms. There's 3 types of assessment, as I said. But you're not. You don't.
Again.
Yeah, it's a total con, all of it, and they don't get paid. If they can't get you through an assessment, they don't get paid, right? Because that's what it's all about. I would also contend that I've done a freedom of information request asking if the agents get any bonuses, etc., by getting people off of benefits. And of course, they wouldn't answer. So I'm going to contend that, yes, that probably happens because they wouldn't answer. So we pull them apart at every point, just keep asking the questions, never refuse, never ever refuse. Because as soon as you refuse, that's it, you're done. So all the time that you're not refusing, you've asked questions, they're refusing to answer. When you get a new appointment, because that's what will happen. We sent you an appointment. Well, I'm not going to attend because you haven't answered this. Oh, we'll just send you a new appointment. And you just reiterate. No, please answer the questions and I'll be more happy to move forward with you. And of course they can't. So you're just going around in a big circle. But ultimately, paper-based review. And I'll just read you something, as I remember it. In the ESA stroke work capability assessment legislation, this is what it states. It is preferable and less stressful to the claimant to give a paper-based review. That's in the legislation.
Right.
And of course, they don't want to give you a paper-based review because the agents don't get paid. And that means the DWP themselves have got to do the work, which means they've got to go through your medical info. Again, who are you? Who are
Yeah.
you going through my medical info? And here's the other thing that people need to be aware of. They can pick and choose what they want to include from your medical evidence. So they can decide, oh, we'll use that bit because that will benefit us because it says X, Y, Z. And so you can send them your whole medical records, but they will pick and
Very
choose. How's that right? And if
yeah.
that's what they're doing, then show me some indemnity insurance for the person that's made that decision because I've got a problem with them now and I want compensation. They've caused me harm, loss, and injury.
Yeah. Well,
I'm
that's it. And it's like
unqualified.
the bias there, isn't it, of that cherry picking again, just so blatant, isn't it? Of course they're gonna.
Yeah,
It's basically like when you go into an administration, administrative court. You're not going to walk into any of their courts actually because they're all private bar courts and start shouting
yeah,
mortgage fraud. It's like what I always say: see judge, see postmaster, see banker. They're never going to rule against themselves. Of course, that ability for them once we've
yeah,
consented, and there's that
yeah,
word. There's a reason why the word con is in consent
yeah,
in commercial terms because we give them the consent to do it. But like you say, when we do that kind of they we accept the terms in theory, in general, that kind of it's like the validation of claim with debt, as long as you just answer me these questions and provide, the necessary documents to back up what it is that you're saying. They're like, like that's
yeah,
game on for them, isn't it? They're never gonna put that on the record, like you said, because that's game over for them.
yeah, exactly. And the same's happening
Unbelievable,
at
isn't it?
tribunal. The
Yeah.
same's
And
happening at
the fact that they're
tribunal.
making money off it, that they get commission to
Yeah,
get people benefits. I mean, it's absolutely disgusting. Like that they've been, people who've had a few months to live have been, fit, declared fit for work. Like,
yeah,
wow, I mean, it's absolutely criminal.
it is. It's beyond criminal. It's as I say, it's up to people. I mean, I would say 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get the correct award. Um, and then you've sent yourself, 6, 8, 10 months, who knows at the moment down the line. And now you've got to start the mandatory reconsideration process, which is going to add even more months and blah, blah, blah. So this is why we say fight them from the off because you're just asking questions. And as
Yeah.
you said earlier, Callie, we have an inalienable right to protect our own health and welfare, and consenting to these people isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. And that's the whole con of the game of life in the theatre. It's all fiction, and it's all that, in legal anyway, in their jurisdiction, it's all in the minds of men. We give it the authority, we give it the necessary consent for them to proceed, either that be our silence or our ignorance, and things are
Yeah,
lifting, things are changing, like that's like 100% sure. Even with my wee little channel, but I mean that's I mean again, if you want to find out more about this, I'll put the link to the Telegram, Kevin's Telegram below. Kevin works in there helping people on their individual cases. He's extremely helpful, gives so much of his time to this, which is absolutely amazing. And he doesn't charge you for the documents. We'll put the documents up. But again, if you want to join the group, this is to help people and to get people out of these awful, awful,
yeah.
awful situations. I mean, on a spiritual note, Kevin, let's finish on something. I always like to ask people where they kind of get up to in in the divine comedy, which is existing now, the current apocalypse. I mean, like I say, the work that you do is absolutely, tremendous and so helpful and life changing and life saving for people. Where do you think we're up to as a species with a potential collective? I don't like to say ascension because it makes it like we're all about to float off the realm, but and we've had some really cool conversations when I went on David's podcast, David from SPLS Pro, didn't we? We had a proper good natter in the spell, just rambled on as she does, like for hours. But where do you see things are and where they're going in your journey at the moment with everything?
well, I see. I'm still amazed at how many people are just, for want of a better term, conformist. That's frightening. And a lot of people, they don't want to stand up for their rights. The maxim of law,
Yeah.
If man does not know his rights, he hasn't got any.
That's wrong.
And they're not going to give them to you. They're not going to
No,
tell you what your rights are. So you need to know what your rights are. But
yeah,
it appears, I would certainly say, more so since COVID, that people are waking up, becoming more aware, which is brilliant to see. I mean, some of the people that you would never think are suddenly going, hang on a minute, right, I can see what's going on. And the voices are starting to be raised. But for me, there's still not enough. You know, this needs to be a massive movement, really, to
yeah,
really make some change. And I just hope that people start waking up a little bit quicker, because the rate things are going, we might not be able to do it for much longer. They're messing about with everything. Oh, you
mm,
can't say this, and the right to complain is going to be the next thing.
yeah.
So
Wow.
it's
Like,
really
and
paramount.
And that even the wording again, isn't it? You know, that we're making a complaint is that to keep us as these persons in these fictions, the Walking Dead, who just complain to the slave owner masters. Like, we don't like that. You know, it's like I'm going protesting. You know, well, protest is to accept the terms, the conditions, yet be unhappy. Petition is to beg, and it's like what's happening
Yeah,
with the farms. Sometimes I could scream, because it's the farmers and them all going down to London. I mean, wow, what a beautiful, amazing show. I mean, and absolutely 110% to those guys who are standing up to this. And if we could just kind of get to the farmers, I mean, people who, I know about trust law, but I don't set up trust, but, like Andy Truman from The Good, or, Trina from Direct Private Trust, these people who, the inheritance issue is that, if we utilize trust law just as they do, the elites, then the property naturally passes down to the next generation without paying taxes. There's
yes,
no obligation to even pay tax or income tax. If we can get this out, like you're saying, the
no,
work that you do, and I'm just some gobby bird from Bolton, but unfortunately, it's we keep kind of chipping away at the old wall there. But there's 63.5 million people allegedly in this country, and 23.5 million of them are public servants. So that's a lot of minions doing a lot of the bidding, and like you say, perhaps I know a lot of it's done through ignorance, but it's still, ignorance is no defense. So it's just, again, in scripture, as I bang on about, and I'm no religious nut, but it says, when you know, tell others. And that's exactly what you're doing, Kevin. And I, like I said, just some gobby bird from Bolton, really, who kind of goes, no! Like, because I just can't stand the injustice of it. I mean, there was a video going around, and to be honest, I don't do fear porn, but I do pay attention to that degree. And they're saying that they're going to fake another like foot and mouth outbreak, and that they've got evidence to suggest that the government have already got the militia in to act it out. They've already got the wood coming over from Russia to burn all the. It's obviously all been pre-planned. I have to be careful what I say on the older
yeah.
age. But yeah, I mean, you just kind of I'm no Nostradamus, Kevin, but I'm always somehow weirdly, 20 steps ahead and a few years ahead, like, and it's because they tell us. And again, it's exact, it highlights exactly the work you do and some of the work that I do. That literally, like I said, we're not psychic, we just know language, we know the codes, we know, the systems, and there's all those 8 million acts and statutes, which are a load of nonsense. But it always, like you do with your work, it hinges on a few points, and generally we wrap them up with their own rules, because we as living men and women on the land, under the constitution of the realm of England, which is where we should be, and we should be instructing these public servants. I mean, it never ceases to amaze me that they come on and they just make up a load of nonsense, and the mates rubber stamp it, and on that jurisdiction goes, and we all just jump up and down about it and go, we don't like that. It's remembering who we are, it's knowing we're the beneficiaries, it's knowing that we're really the creditors. If we can get people understanding economics, banking, these basics. But unfortunately, like you said, there's a lot of people who are still doing the ostrich thing, and it's that will for the ignorance of not
Yeah,
wanting to know. But anyway, I still jump up and down like like a naughty little. But again, that jumping up and down isn't how we should be behaving, is it? We should be asking questions. We should be,
no,
that system will go down when we remember who we are ultimately, and that's my passion
yeah,
really. And
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and the work
There's,
you're
there's,
doing is
it's other thing. I
brilliant.
mean, well, as I say, I tell you what really got us involved was we were noticing the amount of people dealing with the DWP that were committing suicide, being left with no money. You know, it was all over the papers. It still is. So that's where we came in and going, no, this isn't right. You know, so that's where we've sort of, Graham and I, evolved it from that sort of point, and that's what really brought it to us. But as I say, everything we talk about, we've used ourselves, we've given to other people that have all been successful, and so it's nothing we wouldn't use, and we don't give anybody anything that hasn't been tried and tested. It's all, you know. Just a quick thing, just so people are aware, if you've had an assessment, and let's say, miracle upon miracles, you got the correct award and you're quite happy, and you might get an award for a year, you might get it for 2, 3, 10. 10's the maximum for PIP. Now so if you've had that, now next time it comes round for assessment, because you've already done an assessment, you can just ask for, look, I'm not up to it this time, really can't, it's too much for me, I require a paper-based review. Now what that means is they have to look at your medical evidence and the stuff you said to them before. So you're taking yourself out, right? It wore me out. I did do one a while ago, 3 hours. 3 hours on the telephone. All right, but I'll be honest with you. I did it knowing, I was sort of hoping they were going to mess with me.
Yeah.
Right? I really was, because I thought, no, I'm gonna play your game and then see what you do. They didn't mess with me, and I'll be honest with you, I nearly fell off my chair. I had an award inside 14 days.
Well, they're
Done.
they're not crossing the big boys, Ken.
No, if you know what you're doing, they will eventually leave you alone, because they'll go off and find somebody that doesn't know this, and no, we'll sanction them and we'll make their life hell. So, but as I say, all we're doing is asking questions. That's all we're doing. So, as I say, if you've had an assessment, next time you get it's time for an assessment, paper-based review, I would say it's an entitlement. That's in the Paul Gray report I sent you.
Yeah.
That's just a PDF. Now, that's just something that's specifically for PIP. Okay.
Right.
But if you look through it, read through it, it will say there's about the assessments. It will say face-to-face, telephone, or paper-based. Now, I would say that's an entitlement. But at a minimum, it's your right. One of those assessments is your right. So why are these agencies choosing how you're assessed?
Yeah, wow.
This is the thing, right? That's what's going on. Yeah. So all we're saying is, I'm not happy.
And there's got to be so many data issues, like you say, with your private medical records being in the hands of, John Smith.
Yeah.
Dog.
Who is it?
Next door neighbour, the cat. I mean, who knows, and it's like, like I say, when I was listening to you talking, somebody who's a bit of a data nerd, I'm just going, oh my God, like, you could have a field day on it with the data itself, really. Like I say, these people who aren't qualified to be handling or observing and reading and picking apart your medical records, like your private.
Yeah, or you shouldn't even be required to give these people any private, personal and sensitive medical data. Exactly. Right, but that's what they want you to do. Who are you? Again, you can go down. You can go down the road if you can make complaints to the ICO, Information Commissioner's Office, if they're failing. If you've asked under Freedom of Information or data protection and they're not responding, that's all done online. Just remember, if you've asked for information and they haven't responded, in order to meet the criteria for the ICO, you must give them a further 7 days. So if you've asked something under Freedom of Information, for instance, you've got 30 days, they haven't responded, as as a courtesy, you just send them a little message saying, "Oh, you failed to respond," but as a courtesy, I give you a further 7 days.
Yeah.
They won't respond, but now you've met the criteria to put your complaint into the ICO. Okay,
Yes.
because the first thing they'll tell you is go back and give them another 7 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
So
we've already done.
if you do that before you contact the ICO, you've met the criteria.
Yeah. So
But as I
and
say,
that's
it's
it, innit? It's just knowing that stuff, isn't it? And it's quite
yeah,
simple. It might sound a little intimidating for people who perhaps like really do need to take on the DWP in this way. And I hope many people, I hope this video goes viral, Kevin, because it's such important information that, like I say, you've made it as simple as possible for people, so it's not like a scary thing to be coming to and or at, isn't it? And our data is, your data is your private property. And when you hand it
yeah,
over in trust to your doctor, and or the DWP. Well, it's like all these companies, Maximus Capita, Igneous, or was it Axios? They all have very Latin
yeah,
sounding corporate kind of names. It's
yeah,
all very kind of, the Capitus Maximus. That is the dead fiction. That is the all
yeah,
caps name. And
yeah,
that's why I promote BSV so heavily on the channel, because it has an ability where we can take our data back, be that your medical records, and you can upload that to a private network. Because as soon as we put our data onto corporate servers, we gift it to them. That means,
yeah,
Max, he who creates owns, they own it. And I say this time and time again, and I'll repeat it again on this video, but Amazon earned more from our data than it did its traditional business. Like, that's how huge our data is. So data,
yeah,
again, in relation to the work that you do, the stuff that I do, it's like so key to it. And again, just
yeah,
getting people to hopefully understand the basics of that, which obviously you do really well and beautifully. And so I'll put these documents up, and I'll put the PIP document up, the PDF as well, so people can just access
yeah.
them and download them. But certainly, if
They
you
can
want to
read.
know more and you want to deep dive more, Kevin's great. I'm just saying you're great, Kevin. Like, because you know, but you are.
Thanks.
You're very approachable. You really break things down for people. You're funny. You're warm. Because sometimes people in these groups can be like, "Hey, read the fucking files out. Don't be an idiot." And there's none of that, is there? Because that
No.
kind of attitude doesn't help anybody. So it's dead friendly in the group. I'm in there, but Kevin's your man type of thing. So. Kevin, thank you so much for coming and bringing all those key points to people, because, like I say, it's super, super important, because, like I say, people are dying here. This is life and death for people, and
Yeah,
the whole system's a criminal racket, as we know. But like, just hinging on these few. Well, you've made it simple, because it is they make it look so complicated, but you've made it as simple as you can for people. And do go join the Telegram group if you are suffering and labouring under this, the cosh of this awful system, because they don't have the authority, as we've just discovered and found out, to do it in the first place. So, Kev,
yes.
thanks so much for
No,
lighting
absolute
us.
pleasure. I say it's not exhaustive what I've brought to you today.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter what the situation is. It might not be over assessment. We can help you and give you. I hate using the term because it's usually bar stewards that use it, but direction. But we can certainly give you plenty of information. We can give you questions to go and ask, and don't be shy of asking, because if you just consent to these people, they're going to shaft you. That's their job. So don't
yeah,
consent. Just ask the questions. Never refuse. Don't consent. Ask the questions.
yeah. Well, and well, you might not have heard it here first, but you've certainly had the detail here on Dark Matters first. And as we say, the
Yeah.
devil is almost always in the detail. So thanks
Yes.
everybody so much for watching. Contact Kevin if and please do share this video with people that are being affected, if it isn't just yourself. And we shall catch you next time. Good night. Good night. God bless, as I say, everybody. Ta-ta for now.
Thanks all. Thank you all. Good
Thanks.
luck. You know where we are.